Okay, good morning. I'm going to go over the test as a video so that if you missed anything, you can go over it. You can get the explanation again and again if you need it. So the very first problem said multiply the complex numbers. So I am going to multiply these first two binomials together first. So 2 times 3, I get 6. 2 times negative 4i is negative 8i. I times 3 is 3i, and then I times negative 4i is negative 4i squared, which is going to change it to a positive 4. So if you simplify this first, you're going to have an easier time with the next step, okay? So this becomes 6 minus 5i, and then this changes because negative 4 times I squared is negative 1, so negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. So this turns into 10 minus 5i. All right, so now we bring down our 6 plus 5i, and now I'm going to FOIL or multiply again, however you like to look at it. 10 times 6 is 60. 10 times 5i is 50i. And then negative 5i times 6 is negative 30i. I'm doing the next step in my head. And then negative 5i times positive 5i is negative 25i squared. And then we get, all right, remember that's going to change. So I'm going to go combine like terms. 60 plus 20i, and that's going to turn into a positive 25. And then once we get that, this becomes 85 plus 20i. And that's it. That's the answer. Okay? Make sure if you're using your calculator, remember that little trick I showed you, go to mode, and then go and turn it into a plus bi. You can put all that in your calculator and work it out. It will do it for you, okay? Make sure that your second decimal point is I, and then it works for you. Go ahead and try it and see what happens. All right, let's go on to the next one. B, if you didn't do A, you should have done B. So you're writing a polynomial with these roots. So, all right, so we go x plus 3, because you got to change the sign, right? X plus 5, because you're changing the sign, x minus 3, and then x minus 5. I am going to group my conjugates together. Conjugates are terms that have the same term, but they have opposite signs in the middle. All right, I'm going to save time now. I'm going to FOIL this group first, and then I'm going to FOIL that group next. So once I'm done, I end up with x squared minus 9, and then this becomes x squared minus 25. I'm not going to go through and do every step for you. Okay, now you go and multiply these together. Now remember, this is the function, so we have to remember we're not just dealing with an polynomial. We're dealing with a polynomial function. All right, so now we're going to go and multiply again. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. X squared times negative 25 is negative 25x squared. Negative 9 times x squared is negative 9x squared. And negative 9 times negative 25 is positive 225. Okay, combine your like terms, and we should get something like this. And you're done. And remember, it is a polynomial. All right, function, not just a polynomial. All right, so let's go on to number 2. All right, you got roots at negative 3 and 4i. All right, if you missed this one, if I took off a few points, it could be because you wrote x plus 3 is a root and x minus 4i is a factor. A factor. All right, and then you went through and you FOILed and you did it right. So I didn't take off everything, but I think I only gave you partial credit because you forgot the key ingredient that if positive 4i is a root, negative 4i is also a root. So you've got one more factor to put in there. All right, so now you go and you're going to multiply. Okay, so there, now you got 3. Remember, imaginary roots or irrational roots have to travel in pairs. All right, so I'm going to go and multiply my conjugates first because that's going to make life a lot easier. So I get x squared plus 4ix minus 4ix. I is a number, so we always put that before the x. And then minus 4i squared. All right, that's going to turn into x squared. These two guys go away. Plus 4. And then this is x plus 3. All right, from here, something just happened. I did something wrong. Hold on, I just looked at my other paper that I was doing. That's a 16i squared. So sorry. So that turns into a 16. All right, some of you made that mistake too. So, all right, we're all in the same boat. Okay, so negative 16i squared is that one. So it turns into a positive 16. So sorry. Now let's go and multiply. So we're going to go x times x squared is x cubed. I'm going to multiply my x squared term next. 3 times x squared is 3x squared. Then I'm going to do this one just because I want to keep it in standard form. X times 16 is 16x. And 3 times 16 is 48. All of them are positive. So now we end up with x cubed plus 3x squared. Oh, it's already in standard form. I don't even have to write this over again. And there you go. Okay. If you didn't write it in standard form, I didn't take off any points, but, you know, just try to keep good practices. All right, next one, number 3. You're going to find the roots and the vertex of this. Okay, once you graph it, I'm going to turn this off for a minute because there's a big fire engine going by. Okay, so that fire engine just went by, so now we can do this. So we're going to find the roots. The first way I'm going to do it is by completing the square. And then I'm going to do it again by the quadratic formula. So completing the square, remember this is basically 0 equals x squared minus 20x minus 8. You want to move your c out of the way. So I'm going to make this, I'm going to rearrange all these things. X squared minus 20x is equal to positive 8 because you moved it over there, it became positive, and then I use the symmetric property and switch the whole thing. All right, so now I've got to find, I'm going to save a little room here. I want to take half of b, so b over 2, and then you square it. Okay, so half of b is negative 10, and then, oh, I'm sorry, it is negative 10. All right, and then I'm going to square it, and you get 100, okay? Because negative 20 over 2, and then square is 100. So we're going to add that to both sides, add 100 and add 100. And now you're going to factor the left side. So this becomes x minus 10 times x minus 10. You can skip this part and go right to this next part, which is x minus 10 all squared equals 108. Now we're going to solve it for x. So there are 3 main steps you do. First of all, you take the square root of both sides. So we've got x minus 10. Now that equals the square root of 108. So what is the square root of 108? What's a perfect square that goes into 108? Some of you picked numbers like 4 or something like that, but really the largest square that goes in is 36. Okay, so 36 goes in 3 times. All right, so we're going to do the square root of 36 times the square root of 3. All right, so now we've got x minus 10 equals, remember you have a positive and negative root, square root of 3. And then we go and we add 10 to both sides. And remember your irrational number goes first. So 10 plus or minus 6 square root of 3. That's your, that is your root. Those are your roots, okay? If you want to go find your vertex, remember the formula for vertex, the x value is equal to the opposite of b over 2a. So let's go find that. You've got the opposite of b, so b is negative 20. So the opposite of b is going to be 20 over 2 times, what's our a? 1. So 20 over 2 is 10. Well, that's your x value. All right, now you've got to go and put your x value back into the formula or into the function to find what it's going to be. So we're going to go, this is started out as x squared minus 20x. Was it plus 8 or minus 8? Minus 8. Okay, I'm going to put that in there, minus 8. And we're going to find our f of x or our y. All right, so now we're going to put in 10 squared minus 20 times 10 minus 8. And that should come out to be 100 minus 200 minus 8. So it's equal to negative 108. That is your y value of your vertex. You've got to put that in there, or I took off 2 points. All right, I'm going to do this with the quadratic formula now. All right, if you're a quadratic formula fan, it does the same thing. It'll get you the same answer. It's just a different way of doing it. So remember, your quadratic formula is the opposite of b, plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. All right, many of you were doing b squared in the beginning, and that's where your numbers went horribly wrong. All right, so we're going to do, all right, so a is 1, b is negative 20, and c is negative 8. You don't have to go changing anything. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to go and put this in. Opposite of b is 20, plus or minus square root. Now, if you do b squared minus 4ac over here on the side, it might make it a little easier. So I'm going to do negative 20 squared. Remember, negative times negative is going to give you a positive. Minus 4 times 1 times negative 8. So this is going to be 400 minus 4 times negative 8. Now think about that. That's a negative times a negative. So 400 plus 32 is 432 under here. All over 2a, so that's 2. All right, so now we're going to go and simplify the square root of 432. Square root of 432, all right, what goes into 432? I don't even know. Let me pause for a minute. Okay, 144 goes in, so we're going to do the square root of 144 times the square root of 3. All right, so now let's go down here and rewrite this. 20 plus or minus square root of 144. Oh, I don't need that big of a square root sign. Times the square root of 3 all over 2. And now we're going to just basically put a fraction into lowest terms. This becomes 20 plus or minus 12 square root of 3 all over 2. And then this becomes 10 plus or minus 6 square root of 3, because everything got divided by 2. And there you go. There's the answer for that. Same thing with the other thing. When you wanted to go find the vertex, it's the opposite of b over 2a. So the opposite of negative 20 is positive 20. All right, over 2, so that's a 10. And then you go and you plug, that's your x value, okay? Then you're going to go plug that back in, and so you've got x squared minus 20x. Oh, what was it again? Minus 8. Okay, so you're going to plug that in. You get 10 squared minus 20 times 10 minus 8 comes out to negative 108. That's your y value. All right, I think we had one more. All right, so you're also going to find the roots and the vertex for this one. All right, I am going to do this with the completing the square for this, just because it's faster right now, and I'm running out of time. The bell's about to ring. So I've got, all right, so, oh no, you can't do completing the square too easily. Never mind, that's why I did the quadratic formula on my sheet. So I'm going to do the quadratic formula. There we go. So let's go, and A is 5. B is negative 2, and C is 4. The reason I'm not doing the completing the square is because this leading coefficient needs to equal 1. And if we go and we divide everything by 5, we're going to get a lovely little fraction over here. And then you got to take half of that and square it, and it's a big nightmare. So we're not doing it. So in this case, I would say go ahead and use the quadratic formula. So I'm going to plug this in, and I've got the opposite of b, so 2 plus or minus square root. Now I'm going to do b squared minus 4ac over here. 4 times 5 times 4, and I get 4 minus 80, I think. That's 20 times 4, yes. So that's going to give me negative 76. All over 2a, so 2 times 5 is 10.